Gunfire Reborn is basically Hades that grew an extra dimension in a tumor. The tumor was the storyline, and it had to be cut off along the way. But in its absence, we got one of the nicest little hidden gems I've seen in a long while. So let's have a chat about Gunfire Reborn. Gunfire is a cute little roguelike FPS where you cosplay as a furry gunning down animorphs. And that's what Gunfire does well. The heads are huge and the guns are plentiful. Each weapon is unique in how it shoots and its stats. Some are bursty snipers, and others are Iron Man gloves that take damage multiple times a second. And what you want largely depends on you and the build you want to make that run, which is where most of the replayability comes from. From the desire to play through harder and harder dungeons with more unique builds, and to try and break the game in half. I think one of the most fun runs I had early on was dual wielding with lifesteal, so I could face tank bosses. It didn't quite work, but it was fun as hell. And with a few more scrolls, it could have gone the whole way. And that's the second half of the core gameplay. Scrolls. Scrolls are basically modifiers for your character and weapons that can all layer on top of each other. And with that, you can try and create the most ridiculous builds. Want to shoot forever? What if you just regenerated bullets? Want to drop enemies? What if headshots are worth double? The combination of scrolls and guns are what make each run unique and interesting. Because you can't actually get what you want when you want it. You need RNGesus for that. One run you can have amazing luck and basically be a walking god for no effort, while others you can be destitute the whole way through and dreading each and every encounter. And all of that tension comes to a head with the bosses. Each thematic dungeon has a set of bosses that you have to fight as a capstone to the dungeon, and each one is unique in basically every aspect. They can be somewhat silly, but unique. Now, boss fights finishing off a dungeon isn't a terribly novel concept, but it's done pretty well and it adds to the game for sure. Each one challenges aim and positioning in fun and interesting ways. And you know what doesn't add to the game at all? Live commentary. But that's what you'll get if you join me live at twitch.tv/FattRoss. I stream Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. PST and Saturdays at 1 p.m. PST. Come stop in and say hi. One of Gunfire's bigger additions to the genre is character classes and co-op. When I played it, they already had 4 unique characters, each with their own ability sets and builds to accentuate them. Each character has a unique direction mechanically. The cat is mainly for elemental damage stacking, the dog is for explosives and dual wielding, the bird is the best solo character, and the tiger is supposed to be a sniper. Each character brings their own twist to the gameplay, and encourages a different style of play. It's a nice way to coax players into build directions that the devs found fun, and a good way to make each player feel unique in co-op as well, if they choose to go that route. So where could they do better? Well, Gunfire certainly has some issues surrounding their endgame. It has a habit of scaling difficulty by tacking mechanics onto enemies that don't actually reinforce or make sense for their core identities. Think a melee enemy getting the ability to spawn ranged lightning. Not only do they use random mechanics that fight their own enemy design, but they also scale everything vertically way too much, to the point where enemies become nigh unkillable without good builds. But at the same time, those enemies are able to insta-give the player. And this entire scaling system is compounded by certain abilities causing AoE slows, which can basically guarantee death. The game is not forgiving in the slightest when you can no longer dodge and kite. Movement is king. Which is why I favored the bird in solo play. He has inherent movement abilities which help to navigate the slows, and armor to fend off the one-shotting. It definitely feels like the characters aren't quite in line with each other. More than likely they're just there to push specific builds. Weapons are a different matter entirely though. It feels like Gunfire just adds weapons for the sake of it without considering each weapon's role in the overall game. It feels like many weapons are simply filler to play with while you wait and hope for a decent drop with good modifiers. Most weapons feel like a quota rather than a way to reshape the gameplay, and I would certainly prefer to see each weapon push the combat in a different way mechanically, and encourage different niche builds. So what else could have gone better? I think the progression is a little shallow and slow for what it gives you. The game has a lot of vertical progression, which comes in the form of ascensions for characters, which are just stray buffs to their unique abilities, and in the form of a general skill tree, which can be anywhere from extra damage to re-rolling the items at the dungeon shops. These aren't world-shattering upgrades, but they do add up. I think the upgrade systems are okay at best and not terribly engaging, which is really unfortunate considering the massive time investment it takes to unlock them. It feels like these progression loops are really just tacked on to give the player a reason to keep playing the game, instead of actually adding any new enjoyment to the experience. I would love to see the upgrades actually give new abilities or mechanics that add on to the game to change the dungeons. Maybe you can buy new scroll types with the XP. Maybe you can make the dungeons harder for better drops. Maybe you can upgrade the default pistol to make it useful. Or maybe you can unlock modifiers that influence the drop rates of certain weapons or scroll types. Which leads into something else that I think the game desperately needs. A way to lead the RNG. I would have so much more fun with the game if I could somehow influence what I'm getting. I get that the runs have to have RNG to make it fun, but why can't I get an unlock for 20% more explosive buffs? Or a modifier that favors more ascension scrolls over other drops? I really want some way to influence the randomness so I can try to target specific builds. I want to do an Iron Man run with the dog, but I also don't want to do 50 runs to maybe get the chance to try. I would certainly take a page from Hades here and try to work in some RNG influence. And after I steal the RNG mechanics, the next game I would pilfer from would be Deep Rock Galactic. It's a different game for sure, but I would love to see Gunfire Reborn more or less steal Bosco. Who is Bosco? Well, Bosco is an AI companion that can be used in solo play in order to balance out the co-op mechanics. He's a little friend that more or less follows you around and helps you kill enemies and collect loot. Now, he doesn't replace actual players for sure, but he makes solo play a lot more fun and viable, which is something that I found very lacking from Gunfire at higher difficulties. The co-op mechanics on certain units are extremely punishing, and a Bosco knockoff would help make the whole ordeal a lot more fun, and stitch together the solo and multiplayer experiences nicely. So, let's wrap this one up. Gunfire Reborn is a beautiful little gem with a mobile art style, and the gameplay is anything but. It's a hardcore roguelike shooter that will keep you addicted for a long, long while. You'll crawl through their well-built dungeons hundreds of times, fighting unique and interesting enemies that will push your movement, aim, and luck to its limits. It's a ton of fun. This is honestly an amazing little hidden gem. It certainly has a lot of ways it could be improved, but for $12 I literally could not expect any more. If you even remotely like shooters, this is worth your time and money, without a shadow of a doubt. Enjoy!